Welcome to Nerd Narrates, where I pick the best stories from the internet and share them with you. Let's begin the video. My parents are the typical example of getting married young, finding out you both have become very different people by the time you reach your mid-20s, but still stay together for the children type of couple. My parents also have a very typical love story. My mom, F40, met my dad, M40, when they were in high school. My mom was the theater kid who was quiet, shy, and aloof. She loved literature, theater, and reading, so she was always engaged in that kind of stuff. My dad was the complete opposite. He was the loud, popular football kid. And my parents met in their sophomore year of high school and initially had an awkward relationship because of their differences. Eventually, they were able to put that aside and started going out. Even with their differences, their relationship worked out super well and continued to date through college before they even engaged and married by the time they were 21. My mother then gave birth to me, F18, and my brother, M15. Their relationship went well through most of this. My mother became a stay-at-home mom, and my dad joined his family business. My dad's family business was run by him and my two amazing uncles after my grandfather had passed away. Unfortunately, when I was about 3, my parents' marriage started going downhill. They both started to realize that they were very different people who wanted very different things in life. Their relationship became very on and off, and they would fight most of the time but also would ruminate about their relationship and get back together. My mom knew she was stuck with my dad as she was almost 28 when things seemed to worsen for them, but she knew she had no escape as she was financially dependent on my dad. Around this time, my mom had also given birth to my brothers, so my mom's and dad's side of the family often pressured them to stay together for the family, and due to the lack of the confidence my mom had, she decided not to leave. My parents' relationship after this period was not as explosive as it used to be during their mid-20s, as they knew they had to make a good environment for me and my brother. Things continued as they used to be. Even though I did not grow up in a toxic household, I knew my household wasn't the same as the other kids' because of how distant my parents used to be with each other. It almost felt like I was raised by 2 roommates or 2 business partners instead of parents. So I grew up in this household and life just goes on with small ups and downs here and there. This was all until I had turned 18. Well, my birthday was last month. Things went well. We celebrated together like we always do, and I had a decent time with my family. I was honestly excited to turn 18, as I could finally leave for college and live with actual roommates who I would at least get along with. So, I think of my birthday as a normal one, expecting nothing out of the ordinary, until my dad tells me he needs to talk to me, my brother, and my mom. He sits us down and explains to us how, as I turned 18, he realized that he spent his life away to raise us, and he was really happy to see us grow. He told me that now that I was 18, he felt partially done with his duty. He went on to say that since he had turned 40, he's gone through sort of a crisis where he often found himself questioning his identity and if he was truly happy with the kind of life he's been leading. Hearing this question kinda hurt me, as it felt like my dad wasn't happy to have us as his family, but man, no one could prepare me for what he was about to say next. He told us that he enrolled himself into therapy where he met Rose. Rose was the receptionist at the psychologist he went to. Rose and him apparently started talking after my dad had been going for therapy for about 6 months, and they started to text, call, and eventually meet outside my dad's therapy sessions. My dad claimed that Rose made my dad feel alive and returned him the youth he thought he had lost. At this point, my mom had started tearing up, and my brother and I started to feel enraged. He told us that he was excited to introduce us to Rose, as we will love her, and my mom had started sobbing at this point. I bat an eye at my brother to comfort my mother, and I tell my dad that we do not want a relationship with Rose. Rose could never replace our mom, and that he needed to seek help for his identity crisis instead of dating young girls who probably had daddy issues. I admit, I was wrong for saying that and got yelled at and sent to my room for the same by my parents. My parents had a conversation outside, and after that, my dad walks into his room, packs his bags, and just leaves. My mom cries and cries all night, not because my dad broke her heart, but because she had wasted all her life away for things to go this way. My mom's mental health just slipped away ever since then, and honestly, so has mine and my brother's. My uncles and aunts have been an amazing source of support through all of this and continue to help my mother with her depression, encouraging her to try to get her life back together. They've also decided to cut off my dad completely for everything except for business purposes. Well, things have been going like this for a couple of months, and I managed to get through my senior year of high school. Now I got into a few of the colleges I had applied for. It's important to know that all these colleges are not in the US, and so their admission systems are quite different. Here, you have to pay your tuition fees along with your acceptance application, and only then your seat will be confirmed in the college. So, the deadline was about 8 days away from the day I found out I was accepted into the college, and I knew my dad was going to pay for my college. I decided to go see him to talk to him about the same. He had moved in with Rose, and I often went to visit them every once in a while. When I made my visit, my dad went on about how I should try to talk to Rose and try to get to know her and such. I ignored most of what he had to say as honestly, he and I both knew that I wasn't going to do that, what he had suggested. Rose also tried making small awkward conversations with me and seemed pretty mad when I did not talk to her. So I just brought up the topic of my college tuition and expenses. I slightly taunted him, asking if he remembers that he's a father too. He does not say anything except that he'll transfer me the amount I need. I just thank him and leave the house. I thought my dad would pay the tuition fees by the next day or even a couple of days after, and I still made sure to keep reminding him about it, and he kept telling me that he would pay eventually and that he was completely swamped up with the project that he was out of town for. Well, the last day of submission arrives and my dad completely stops receiving my calls. I panic and text him, email him, and do everything possible to reach out to him. I even contacted his assistant, who informed me that my dad had specifically asked to not be disturbed, and well, just like that, the day had passed by and I heard nothing from my dad. I'm heartbroken as I type this, as I know I'll not be able to get into this college, as there are no extensions available and the admissions are often done on a first-come, first-served basis. I don't know what to do as I feel like I'm quite distraught, but one thing I know is that I have decided to completely cut off my dad. My family completely supports my decision, but I still feel very conflicted because I never expected my dad to turn his back on me the way he did. I want to talk to him, but I don't want to get my heart broken. AITA for cutting off contact with my dad without hearing his side of the story or ever wanting to reach out to him. Update 1. I've read all your comments and want to thank you for all the advice and support. I do have other options and plans, but this was the college I wanted to get into the most. I'm not going to reveal its name, but it's one of the topmost universities for engineering, so you all can understand how big of a deal it must have been for me. I'd felt so lucky and so proud that I'd gotten into it, and I believe that my dad was too, but unfortunately, his actions have proven to me that those were only empty words. I've accepted that my dad wants nothing but the downfall of his family, and that he claims to love so much. I've decided to completely cut my dad off, and he doesn't understand why. I'm honestly flabbergasted as I can't wrap my head around how clueless my dad is acting. He's acting like he doesn't know he just ruined my future college plans and is trying to contact me in every way possible. Thankfully, my uncles have my back and were able to pay the tuition for another college I was accepted into. Well, I am set to leave about a month from now, and it's been 15 days since I last spoke to my dad, and honestly, I feel calmer than I did every time I was in his presence. I doubt I'll update this anytime soon, but if anything changes, I'll definitely let you know. Update 2. I was happy that I did not have to see my dad anymore, but unfortunately, that changed when my uncle brought my dad along with him last evening. Me, my mom, and my brother were shocked to see him, but we knew that if it was my uncle who brought him here, it would be for a specific reason. So, he sits my dad down along with me and tells me to explain the situation to my dad. I feel a bit confused as I believe that my dad knew everything that went down, but apparently he did not. I had a hard time believing this, but decided to listen to my uncle and tell him everything that went down. I started off by talking about how he was too busy with work until the last day of submission. Then on the last day too, he avoided all my calls, texts, emails, and every way I had tried to reach out to him. I teared up and told him how I hoped so much better from him and how I really did not think he would do me as bad as he did. My dad sat there listening to me. His face was white as if he saw a ghost, and it took him a minute to process the information. He then tells his version of events, and his reaction makes sense to me. He explains to me how he was extremely swamped up with an important project on the last day of my college application submission/tuition fee payment. He was so busy that he, although he did not want to, had to give his bank account information to Rose and tell her to talk to me and to pay my tuition fee. Rose even went as far as to inform my dad how I was being ungrateful and did not thank him. He said that once he was free from his project after about a day from my submission, he tried to call me, and that's when I'd completely blocked him. At that point, my uncles only knew my version of the story and also stopped talking to my dad until yesterday when my dad practically begged my uncle to tell him what happened. According to him, when he had asked Rose if she had said anything to me, she completely denied it, even as far as to make up more lies about me. The realization of everything devastated and angered my dad. He apologized to me profusely. I knew he was speaking the truth as he had even started tearing up. He said he regrets putting his family through everything he did, and he really wants a chance to fix things. I told him that the damage was done beyond repair, and that nothing really could be fixed now, at least for me. My dad did not try to push it on too much and just left. He seemed very exhausted and mentally tired. About 2 days had passed and my uncle let me know that my dad had dumped Rose. He kicked her out of his apartment and stopped all contact with her. My uncle found this out when Rose tried to walk into Dad's workplace without any permit and was escorted by the security. She was yelling how I technically deserved all this because I refused to have a relationship with her. I'm extremely conflicted as I write this. It feels like I have no closure as I move out of this country. My parents spoke and my mom has finally decided to file for a divorce. I think this is partially due to the fact that she has started therapy and got a small part-time job at Aunt's workplace, and this gave her a confidence boost. This time, after finding out about my dad's infidelity, most of my extended family too took my mother's side. My dad has been desperately trying to see my family, especially my mom, but we all have just decided to maintain our distance for the foreseeable future. Thank you all for your support. Your NTA. Your dad's AP is using him, and I'm pretty sure she has a part in whatever went down between you and your dad. Please talk to your uncles and see what you can do about your college. I'm sure they'll look out for you. OP's mom should have seen it long coming. This also isn't the first time your dad probably cheated on your mom, and I'm really sorry about that, but after what your dad did, your NTA, regardless if it's actually his fault or not. Next story. My wife and I started saving for our kids early, but we didn't anticipate college was going to get so expensive. By the time our kids were going to college, we had $106K saved. My son was going to college first, but we told our kids they would get $53K each, and they could go to college with that money, or they could withdraw it after 21, but that was all the money they had, and we weren't contributing more. It would cover almost all the tuition at our in-state university, but if they wanted to go to a more expensive school, that was on them, and they had to cover it. My daughter went to the state university and lived at home. She finished with a degree in business with almost no debt. Our son decided to go to a more expensive school and paid rent, with the tuition there being $27K a year. We tried to talk him out of it, but he wouldn't listen and we gave up, and told him he would have to pay his own way. So after 2 years, he had used up his money, and even worse, he wanted to switch majors, which meant another year in school. He asked us for more money, but we told him he had gotten all his money out of his education fund, and he was angry and didn't want to take out loans, so he started working. We told him he could move back during the pandemic to save money, but he lost his job and picked up another one relatively quickly. It didn't pay as much, and he started buying so much stuff on Amazon. I'm sure he wasn't saving anything. He recently got a better job, but it still doesn't pay what he needs to go back to college, and he started spending it on video games and clothing. 4 years later, he still hadn't saved any money, and his sister is now making 6 figures, and it's making him feel bad. He started smoking weed and not working, playing video games all day, and I think the company caught on and laid him off. He gets unemployment, but it's not enough to save for college, and asks us again for money for college. We told him again all the money we were contributing was in the education fund, and he chose to go to an expensive school. He complained he didn't understand what that meant at 18, and it was our fault for letting him. We didn't let him. We tried to talk him down, but he wouldn't listen, and I couldn't force him to go to the cheaper school. I told him he should just take out loans to study at the cheaper school, but he says I should be paying for his school and isn't budging. We had a lot of fights with him and us over this tuition thing, and he thinks we have treated him unfairly by not giving him more money. He also stays up late partying and comes home at midnight disrupting our sleep and refuses to do chores even when he's living rent-free. We didn't have any choice, but he gave him 3 months notice to move out, and he moved out last week to be with friends. He yelled at me when we weren't ever going to his wedding or seeing his kids, and my wife wants to pay for his schooling so he doesn't end up a loser. NTA, and your son is going to be a loser until he grows up and takes responsibility for himself and his decisions. Regardless of whether he has a degree, he screwed up and is blaming all of it on you and your wife. He clearly didn't take you seriously on the college fund issue while your daughter did. He got to his own decisions. It wasn't your fault for letting him make the decision, and it wasn't your fault that he stopped going, spent a lot of money on Amazon, etc. You told him how much you could give him and gave him that money. You didn't do anything wrong. If you cave and give him money for school, there will still be some problems because he learned that he doesn't have to be accountable for his decisions. NTA. Your son had more opportunities than a lot of other kids in America, and he squandered them. He's acting extremely entitled. If he wants to go back to school, let him do it the way most people do, by working and taking out loans.